Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today for the webinar Using Biomaterials to Obtain the 3A-2B Biological Rule, the tool for implant planning, placement, and restoration. It is a great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Fernando Rojas Vizcaya, whose presentation describes the use of biomaterials in order to obtain the rule in different cases. Dr. Rojas Vizcaya is Adjunct Assistant Professor in the Department of Prosthetics at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. He is the founder and director of both the Mediterranean Prosthetic Institute and Bone Models. He maintains a private practice limited to dental implant surgery and prosthetics in Castellón, Spain, and he lectures extensively worldwide. We'd like to thank Dr. Rojas Vizcaya for being with us today, and thank botiss for making this lecture possible. Please take note of any questions and comments you have during the lecture, as they will be addressed by Dr. Rojas Vizcaya at the end of the presentation. Without any further delay, please help me welcome the expert himself, Dr. Fernando Rojas Vizcaya.
So, hello everyone around the world. I hope many friends are watching this presentation. This topic is about how we can obtain the 3A-2B biological rule. But of course, we need to start speaking about what is the 3A-2B rule. As many of you know, I am an oral surgeon and also I am a prosthodontist. So I try to focus in my cases in how we can planning to obtain teeth, because this is the end of our cases, the teeth. Patients are not looking for implant or graft or different complex situation. They are looking for teeth. That is the end of the case. So my philosophy working with dental implant is start planning for the ideal teeth for our patient. Once I know what is the correct 3D position for my patient, for the new teeth for my patient, I can start looking for where is the bone to support the new teeth. And this is when I need to apply some rules from the biological point of view. So, first step is in the planning for the new teeth for my patient is find where is the position of the prosthetic teeth for your patient. Once you know where is the position in relation with the face with the patient, in relation with the lips of the patient, in a correct anteroposterior position and in the correct apical coronal position, fix the teeth in the wax-up, in the x-ray, and go and find where is the bone to support these new teeth. Planning for our cases, speaking about prosthetic rehabilitation, implant supported, we need to mix in order to determine what is the new position of the teeth, make the analysis of many extraoral information that we have for our patient, and we need to mix with some intraoral points from the patient that remain stable. So after the patient loses the teeth, some points remain stable into the mouth. So I want to use this point, and together with the extraoral information, I will find where is the new position for the teeth for this patient. Once I have this teeth, I will measure the distance between the margin of each crown in a single case or in a fully maxilla. Measure the distance between the margin of the crown to the level of the bone. And here I will apply the 3A-2B rule that I will explain later. Once I make this analysis between the margin to the bone, I will be able to explain my patient the type of restoration that I can offer. But the teeth always will be in the correct position. What we can change is the level of the bone. We have several points from the extraoral part of the face of the patient. This is what I am using in average. Intraorally, we have this point that we can use in average. From the prosthesis, we have some point that we need to use. In some direction, we will do the analysis of the position of the bone, and this is the different type of restoration. But as you can see here, all this information, all this extraoral information and this intraoral information, we need to use in a complex cases, right? Like a edentulous patient that you don't have any teeth. So where could be the position of the new teeth if you don't have any reference? This is a good case to use the intraoral point of reference together with the extraoral point of reference. Or in a complex cases like this situation, that is a patient with terminal dentition. Where is the position of the new maxillary central incisor? Could be number 11 or number 21. Another case that we can use the intraoral point of reference that remains stable. But all this sequence I need in a complex situation. To explain the 3A-2B rule, let me present two cases. One very simple and very predictable because we have the bone in a correct position. This is the molar that we need to restore, and this is the case that with or without analysis we can obtain the same outcome. Why? Because the bone is in a perfect situation. So let me show you the case very quickly. This is the scenario. My first step is not go and place the implant, is find what is the new crown. And after that, find what is the bone. In the crown, what I am looking for here is basically what is the occlusal plane. Always the first step. What is the occlusal plane or the incisal edge? This is the end of the case. What is the incisal edge of the new teeth? Second step is what is the margin of the crown? Once you have this, is because you have the crown. Next step, what is the bone between the margin of the crown to the level of the bone? You need to measure this distance. Now, take a look of the X-ray of the case. First step, in this particular case, is very simple because you have adjacent teeth that show you what is the occlusal plane, and also you have an opposite dentition with a correct occlusal plane. We have this situation. Now, second step is what is the margin of this crown? Also, in this case, it's very simple because you have adjacent teeth. You have the premolar and the second molar. That is a guide to show you where could be the correct margin for the first molar. Once you have occlusal plane and margin of the crown, it's because you have the crown. Now you can fix, you can wax this crown, you can duplicate this model, you can fix in the tomogram, and now the next step is measure the distance between the margin of the new crown to the level of the bone. Measure the distance. And here we can speak about the 3A-2B rule for the ideal 3D implant placement. You can read all this information in my paper of the Journal of Prosthodontics of 2013, where I present one of the cases that you can see here in this presentation. So the rule said, if you want to obtain this crown in this 3D dimension into the mouth of the patient, the red line is the margin. I need to obtain this margin because I want this occlusal plane. So from the margin of this crown, I need to be able to place an implant in apical direction at 3 mm. Why at 3 mm? Because this is in average the dimension of the biologic width, right? So once I open, if I can place the implant at 3 mm from the margin, this is the dimension of the soft tissue. When I suture again, the soft tissue will be at the same level. And also, we need to place our implant from the margin of our new crown in a lingual direction at 2 mm. But why at 2 mm? Because once you place your implant, the reality is that you need to keep around 2 mm of the buccal bone. Why 2 millimeter? Because if you have between 1.8 to 2 millimeter, you can't preserve this bone. If we have, let's say, half millimeter of thickness of buccal bone after you place your implant, so you can lose this facial bone. So this is why I call the rule 3A-2B, because once I determine what is the crown, to obtain the crown, I want to place my implant 3 millimeter apically from the margin, 3A, and I want to keep 2 of buccal bone, 2B, 3A, 2B. But take a look of this slide. To be able to place this implant at 3 millimeter from the margin and keep 2B is because the bone from the margin of the plant crown, the bone is at 3 millimeter. And to obtain the 2B, I need to have enough bone to be able to obtain 2B, like in this case. So you can see I can place the implant just at the level of the bone, because the bone is at 3 millimeter, and I can obtain the 2B because we have enough bone. This is the particular case that I show you. We need to extract this molar because we have a vertical fracture here. After we make the extraction, I need to preserve bone. Thinking in the prosthesis, I know that I need to have enough bone to keep the 2B later, and I need to have the bone from the margin around 3 millimeter. This is one of the cases where I can use the biomaterial, thinking in the prosthesis. So you can see here that we are using the Cerabond, one of the products from botiss biomaterial, together with a Jason membrane. So we use this biomaterial in this particular case to maintain the volume of the bone to be able to obtain the 3A-2B rule. This is after a consolidation of the graft, and here we apply the 3A-2B rule. Now, we create our ideal crown with the correct occlusal plane and the correct margin of the crown. Now, go and measure the distance between margin to the bone. So this is why we make a radiologic template. You can see showing the zenith of the margin of the molar. We have the first and second step. Now, when you make the analysis and measure the distance, you can see from the margin to the bone, you have 3 millimeter. So here I need to place the implant at the level of the bone, and I will have enough bone to be able to keep the 2B. Very simple case and very predictable. So here, once I open this flap, from this margin to the level of the bone, I will have 3 millimeter, right? So imagine that I open the flap, just place the implant at the level of the bone and suture again. Where will be the soft tissue? Again at the level of this margin. I open the flap, bone is at 3 millimeter. So to obtain the 3A, I just need to place the implant at the level of the bone. And to obtain the 2B, I propose to determine what is the first perforation. Normally, need to be 2B plus half diameter of the implant that I am planning to place here, right? So if I am planning to place a 5 millimeter implant, so I need to add 2 plus 2.5. And at 4.5, I can make my first perforation. So for this way, I can make sure that when I finish the osteotomy, I will have the correct 2B. Now, here, in this case, we can obtain the 3A-2B rule just by placing the implant at the level of the bone and keeping enough bone to maintain the 2B. This could be the same case in a fully maxilla. If you have a fully maxilla and in each slide of your tomogram, the bone is at 3 millimeter, each implant needs to be at the level of the bone and make sure that you have the 2B. Now, I can restore this implant with any type of abutment. You can see that we start for the occlusal surface. You have the space until the level of the bone for pink and white aesthetic. So the space for white aesthetic is from the occlusal to the margin, occlusal plane to the margin of the crown. And now the space for the pink aesthetic is from the margin of the crown to the level of the implant at 3 mm. And you need also the bone at this 3 mm. Once you place the implant at this position, now you start counting from the implant to the occlusal plane. Now from the implant to the level of the soft tissue, you have the space for pink aesthetic, and this is the biologic width. This will be this 3 mm. And from the level of the soft tissue, that now is the margin of the crown, to the occlusal surface, you will have the space for the restoration. Can you see? Everything is about planning the spaces. Now you have your final crown. So we place this implant using the 3A-2B rule. All these biological aspects will work together to maintain the pink and white aesthetic. Now, in this case, we use a CAD/CAM abutment to support the pink aesthetic, and you can see here our final crown. What we planning, we obtain, and we have from the margin of this crown an implant at 3 mm. That in this particular case, the bone was also at 3 mm. Now, let me review another case very quickly. This is this lateral. So you can do the exercise in your mind about the planning. What is the first step? Find where is the incisal edge. So you can select where could be the ideal incisal edge. Second step, where is the margin of the crown? So make the crown. If you agree that this is the crown, the margin is okay. Next step is measure the distance between the margin to the bone. Right? This is the next step. How you can measure this distance? Send the patient for tomogram. Now you have the radiologic template, and you can see here in a lateral view the crown. Remember, this crown is okay for our patient. We cannot move the crown. We fix in the WhatsApp, we fix in the treatment plan, we fix in the tomogram. We never move this crown because we planning to obtain this crown at the end of the case. Now this is the existing bone. Now we can apply the 3A-2B rule. This is the point of reference, the margin of the crown. Right? Now 3A need to be here. Can you see the difference with the molar? So to place the implant at 3 mm from the new prosthetic crown, I need to reduce the bone here. Once I cut the bone, this scenario is the same as is the molar. Now the bone is at 3 mm. If I can keep the 2B and I can place the implant at this level, at the time that I place the implant, I fix the space and case is done. Can you see? Once I place the implant at this level, you have now space for biologic width and for soft tissue that is 3 mm. And the other space is for white aesthetic. Now, we expect that the tissue heal around in this area. Now go and make the case. If I open a flap here, where is the bone? In this case, if I open a flap, the bone is at the level of the margin, right? If I place the implant at the level of the margin, that is in the bone, and suture again, check where could be the final margin of the crown. We can obtain a very short clinical crown. So open, bone is at the level, and you need to place the implant from the margin at 3 mm. How I can place the implant at 3 mm? I need to cut bone. So now I start looking for the 3A. Now I have 1.5. If I place the implant here, my crown will be also a little bit short. So I need to reduce more bone. Don't reduce the interproximal bone because provide support for the interproximal papilla. Now I have the 3A. If I place my implant at the level of the new bone, later the soft tissue will fill this space and the margin of the crown is what is the blue line for this crown. And you see, now I start looking for the 2B rule. Now I have the 2B, and this implant is at the 3A-2B rule position. I can make the immediate provisionalization or not. Anyway, I have the space to do immediately the guide the soft tissue for the new aesthetic or in delayed scenario. In this case, I just connect a healing abutment and wait. Now we have the implant in position, but we have the space to obtain the aesthetic. Take a look at the difference between place the implant just guided for where is the bone or prosthetically guided. In both cases, our dental technician will give the same incisal edge when he makes the final crown. But now, here you have an implant prosthetically guided and you cut the bone. How I know that I can cut bone? Because I am using a prosthetic guide. This guide shows me that I need to reduce bone. If I don't have this guide, I don't have an idea if I need to reduce bone or not. That is the other side. Implant placement, surgical guided. I don't have any prosthetic guide that shows me the relation between the margin and the bone. So I don't see any reason to reduce bone, and probably I will place the implant at the level of the bone. Now, in both cases, we will place an abutment, and in both cases, we will have a crown. In the side where I place the implant prosthetically guided, when I receive the crown, I know that the crown will be correct. So when I compress the tissue, I will obtain the natural size of the crown. In the other side, when I connect the crown looks short. And this is when I need to call my technician and ask why this crown is short. I will explain my technician at that point that the margin need to be more apically. What I am doing at this point, the analysis of the margin, but it's too late because we place the implant and it's also integrated. So this is the case that the dental technician make this overlap to obtain aesthetic. And in this case, the patient can look aesthetically, but patient cannot clean, and later he can lose this implant. So we need to avoid this situation by planning for our cases. Now, in this particular case, after osseointegration, we have the space for the pink and white aesthetic. So I can cut the soft tissue in the master cast until match with the margin of the crown. Once I cut the soft tissue until match with the planned crown, is because both margin of the crown and soft tissue are at 3 mm from the implant. When I make a crown in this new master cast, I can go to the patient, compress, and what happened? This is with the provisional restoration. Can you see? We start with incisal edge, second step, what is the margin? And the margin show me if I need to reduce bone or not. This is with the provisional, and for the final restoration, we can use any type of abutment and any type of restoration. The point is that I have the space to be filled by our dental technician. And this is my final crown. Now, take a look. I will show you 3 more cases just to explain the concept of that planning from the prosthetic point of view. The prosthesis show me if I need to add bone, keep the bone in the same position, or maybe I need to reduce bone. But the point is to obtain the wide aesthetic. Take a look at this case with a root perforation for many years, so I am planning to make the immediate placement and immediate provisionalization, but when I open the flap, when I make the extraction, I can realize this perforation here into the bone, so I don't want to take the risk to do at the same time the implant placement together with the graft. That is possible, but I prefer to make something safe so you can see the size of the defect. So I am planning to do GBR, and here is when we can use our biomaterials. So I start working with the Jason membrane to cover this fenestration here into the bone, and I can fill the socket with the CeraBond, and I can cover all this area with the Jason membrane. And to improve a little bit the biotype of the patient, I can use another collagen membrane, that is the mucoderm. You can see here. So when I fix in the occlusal surface of this area and suture in the position, I can improve the biotype in this area. Normally this is a different case. When I have thin biotype, I like to use the mucoderm because I can improve a little bit the biotype. Take a look at this case, very thin biotype. So once I place the implant, using the mucoderm, I perforate with the circular blade, put the mucoderm in the position, and I fix with the healing abutment. I can put below the flap and suture, and take a look after osseointegration when I remove the healing abutment. Now we have a good biotype in these cases. Going back to our case, after I connect the mucoderm, you can see how it looks in the X-ray. Patients are using a removable partial denture. Here we have the minimum distal, mesiodistal to be able to place implant in all directions, mesiodistal and buccolingual. Now I apply the 3A-2B rule. Another case where the bone is in a correct position in relation with the planet crown. So here I just need to go and place the implant at the level of the bone. So now we start with the drilling process, place the implant. We have the 3A, implant is 3 mm from the margin, and we have the 2B, between 1.8 to 2 mm. The implant is more in a lingual position. Now we make the immediate provisionalization. So we connect the temporary cylinder, we can put the rubber dam here, and using a prefabricated acrylic crown, just fix with any acrylic or any light curing material. Very important, once we finish our provisional, is the facial aspect of this provisional, because remember, we will guide the soft tissue during the healing process, and also you can take care of the interproximal contact distance between the contact to the level of the bone. Very important, the facial contour, because we will guide the soft tissue during the healing process. Now suture and just wait. So you can see here with the implant in position following the 3A-2B rule and with the immediate provisionalization. Now you can see after healing and after osseointegration, when we remove the crown, we have the space for the final crown. We guide the soft tissue, we apply the 3A-2B rule, we have a nice emergence profile here. Now we can take our definitive impression and we can copy the best that we can the contour of the soft tissue. We send to our lab and they can make the scan of the model and they can fabricate our final abutment. So we are planning to add the ceramic directly to this abutment. So you can see that we can evaluate for the perfect fit of the abutment here. To do this type of restoration, it's important that we have the access to the crown for the lingual area. If not, we need to do a crown for cementation. So now we can start working and we add the ceramic for our crown. Now we have the crown in the lab. and we can screw into the implant. This is a crown made for my friend Jose de San Jose Gonzalez from Germany, a very good dental technician, very good in aesthetic. So I want to thank my friend for your excellent work. So let's move to another case. This is about multiple implant in the aesthetic zone. This is the case. This is how I received the patient. We don't have a ferrule effect. We have some areas with periapical lesion. So we are planning to make the extraction of all these roots. In the anterior area, we are planning to improve the table of the bone in the missing lateral and make the socket preservation in the area of the extraction. You can see the situation. So we start here working with the decortication of this area. In this particular case, we use max graft, also from a botiss biomaterial. We place the biomaterial in the area of the missing lateral. I cover with the mucoderm. I also want to improve the biotype in this area, in the occlusal area for this lateral. This is the mucoderm. And also I cover with the collagen membrane, the Jason membrane. We use the big size, 20 by 30 millimeter, to extend from lateral to lateral. You can see, and now we add the material into the extraction socket. After we place the mucoderm, the Jason membrane, the big one, 20 by 30 millimeters, we place the biomaterial into the socket. We have the max graft in this area. Now we cover all this area. We try to improve the biotype in the area of the missing lateral, and you can see now we deliver a partial denture without any compression. Later you will see that our plan, because the incisal edge and the margin for the two central and lateral are okay, we are planning to move the margin of the crown in more apical direction to match with the right canine of the patient, not too much at the same level, to find the harmony with this canine. So you will see. This is after 8 days. You can see the perfect closure of the area here. And this is after 3.5 months. So here we start planning now for our case. The same incisal edge, and you have the new margin for your crown. Can you see that is in more harmony situation in relation with the canine of the patient? So now, with this in my mind, now I have the prosthesis. Now I have the prosthesis, and I can see the relation between the zenith of each central and lateral in relation with the level of the bone. So you can fabricate any type of radiologic template. The point is that you need to see the margin, and you need to be able to measure the distance to the level of the bone. So I use lead strip from all periapical x-ray that I fix into the radiologic template with the sticky wax. Now I send the patient for tomogram. You can see the two lateral and two central. So here we will apply also the 3A-2B rule. We will determine the surgical procedure that we need to follow. We need to determine the mesiodistal and buccolingual position, the depth of the implant, and also the angulation. It's very important that the axis is for the palatal area of the crown, because I want to add the ceramic directly to the zirconia abutment. Now, you can see for this lateral, when I apply the 3A rule, show me that this is like the lateral that I showed you before. So I need to cut the bone. Once I cut the bone, I need to make sure that I have the 2B, and I can place the implant, 3A and 2B. Now, what about the central? 3A need to be here. So I need to cut bone also and make sure that I have the 2B, place the implant at this position. What about the other central? I need to reduce also. If I want to obtain this crown, can you see that to apply the 3A rule, I need to have some crown to measure from the margin. So for this central, I need to cut the bone also to be able to place the implant at 3 millimeters from the margin. After that, I need to make sure that I can keep the 2B and my implant need to be here. Later, I need to work in the angulation to make sure that it's from palatal, behind the incisal edge. And what about the lateral? More or less at the level. Maybe I need to reduce a little bit. I need to make sure that I have the 2B and this is the position for the implant. Now, this is how I can fabricate my provisional. And you see, using silicone index. And after I make the silicone index and I keep some palatal area to support the prosthesis into the mouth, I reduce or cut the white aesthetic, so I remove the teeth, keep the space for the soft tissue, and using acrylic resin I can fabricate this prosthesis. Now, also I have a template showing me where is the margin of the crown. You can see where is the margin. Now, of course, I cannot put this prosthesis because I create some type of pontic, but we need to perforate this area because we need to make the pickup for the abutment later. Now, when I open, you can see the beautiful bone that we have. So this prosthesis is not fitting because it's in contact with the bone. But this shows me where I need to reduce. So I produce too much bone. Can you see? So now I need to place the implant at 3 millimeters from this margin. So I can measure where is the bone and start doing the bone reduction, following or applying the 3A-2B concept of the biological rule. Now this prosthesis is fitting better. Now I have some free space below. Can you see? If I don't make this bone reduction, I cannot obtain this size of this crown. Now we have this space. So now I can place the implant, and if I am good enough placing the implant, I can control the angulation. But this implant, we have the 3A, each implant is 3 millimeters from the margin of my new crown. We have the 2B, and I have the correct angulation that the implant axis is behind the incisal edge. We will see at the end. So during the drilling process, we control. Now, to make the immediate provisionalization, we connect here the uni-abutment to make the screw retained prosthesis, and we are planning to do just one block. Now this is the temporary cylinder. I perforate the prosthesis. You know that the prosthesis is in a correct position because you have the palatal portion now fixed with any light curing material, and now I can add more acrylic and section the palatal area. Now in this prosthesis, I can create the ideal emergence profile, the ideal contour. You can control also the distance between contact point to the level of the bone between each crown. Now, once I suture, the tissue will take the shape of this prosthesis. And this is after 12 weeks. So now, I need to do a single restoration. So I need to remove the prosthesis, I need to remove the abutment and take a new impression. You can see that the tissue collapsed a little bit. I don't worry because always in my master cast I can grind in and reduce the soft tissue to improve the aesthetic. So you can see with a silicone index, when I remove all the implant are close to 3 millimeters from the margin. And I can start doing the adaptation of the soft tissue to the margin of the crown that I can see in the silicone index. Can you see that we improve the emergence profile here? Can you see what is the level of the soft tissue? When I put the silicone index, I can see that the emergence profile and that the soft tissue finish what is the margin of the crown, of the planted crown. So now I can fabricate my new provisional restoration in this master cast, but now it's a single crown. So we start connecting the single crowns with some compression into the soft tissue. You can see this is after a few days. How looks the tissue? Patient complain about this small black triangle, so we need to add a composite or resin in this area and make this shape. Once you have this shape, if you want to obtain a perfect copy of the soft tissue, the way that I am doing is taking an impression of the mouth of the patient and using the provisional restoration to copy the shape of the soft tissue. And when you put the cast, you remove your provisional, and now the shape is into the master cast. Now, this is the final crown after you can see in our final abutment in ceramic with the access for palatal, and this is the final crown made in the laboratory of my friend Enrico Steger in Brunic, Italy. Beautiful ceramic. You can see perfect adaptation between ceramic and the abutment. And this is how the tissue looks, and this prosthesis just will maintain the same soft tissue architecture. And you can see this is after we make the left and right bridge. So you can see how we can manipulate this, the bone and the soft tissue, but always the guide is the prosthesis that we're planning for our patient. And this is how looks the final case. Now, just to finish in a few minutes, to summarize, I want to show this case. Remember, the biomaterials is something that we can use to help us to obtain what? The teeth that we need for our patient. Because the final case is the teeth. So take a look at this case. This is a patient 40 years ago. So if this patient asks me to restore his mouth, her mouth as 40 years ago, the right canine of the patient is ready. The margin is ready. If I want to apply the 3A-2B rule for this canine, will be okay because we have bone very close. But what about the other canine? If I apply the 3A-2B rule, will not be okay. Probably I need to add bone, right? Vertical reaugmentation, soft tissue graft in this area, very complicated case. We can use the biomaterials to create this new situation. But after I make the planning of this case, and we conclude that we can move all the teeth in the most little bit more apical position. So now we don't need to graft. Now maybe in the right side we have too much bone, and maybe also in the left side we move from the situation that we don't have enough bone to the situation that we have too much bone. So now we need to plan in the case. Take a look where I need the new bone for this case. Now, we're planning for our restoration. You can see we have two types of prosthesis. One with ovate pontic, one without ovate pontic. And you see in one side the prosthesis is without ovate pontic. The other side we have ovate pontics, except in the area where we are planning to place the implant, that is in the canines and in the first molar. We only see the margin in the pod canine and in the two molars, but in the other teeth we have the ovate pontic. Now, in one of the prostheses we put our radiopaque material to measure the distance between margin to the bone, to see what I need to do with the bone. So take a look. This is the areas where I am planning to place implant, canine and molars, and the other area we have ovate pontic. So check in the area of the implant. Now we start speaking from our crown because this is the end of the case. So I am not start speaking from the bone. This is my crown and this is the bone. 3A, if I want this crown, an implant needs to be here. So I need to cut the bone here and make sure that I have the 2B and place the implant here. Soft tissue will fill this area. In the extraction socket area, we have this crown and this bone. 3A is below bone. This is good because remember that we will lose the bundle bone after the extraction. So I need to place the implant at this level. This is 3 mm from the margin, but it's below bone. That is good. But remember, in the extraction socket area, we need to place our implant around 1.5 to 2 mm. We need to create this gap. If you can place your implant with this gap, later after bone remodelation, you can obtain close to this 2B. The thickness of the bone will be around 2B. Now, in the other canine, the same situation. We need to cut the bone a little bit to obtain the 3A. All these scenarios are like the lateral that I showed you at the beginning. My crown showed me that in order to place the implant at 3 mm, I need to cut bone. And make sure that you have the 2B and place the implant at 3A-2B. What about the smaller? The margin, I measured 3 mm apically. This is 3 mm, so I need to cut bone also because this 3 mm will be filled by the soft tissue. And make sure that you have the 2B. So, if you make the bone reduction, you place your abutment to make the immediate loading. So you put your cylinders, make your pickup, and finish your prosthesis so you obtain this situation. Take a look how the tissue heal below this crown. Heal with the shape of your prosthesis, right? And in the area of the extraction socket, also, after bone remodelation, the soft tissue take the shape of the prosthesis. So this is how the tissue heal below a prosthesis. If I remove the abutment and everything, take a look. We expect that the tissue take the shape of the prosthesis. Now, what about if you place the implant, you reduce the bone, you place the implant, but you lose the primary stability. So I cannot make the loading. I just place a healing abutment, but I cannot make a fixed prosthesis. So I need to deliver a complete denture. Here, the tissue will heal with this shape below a complete denture, right? With this shape. This will be the shape of the soft tissue because the complete denture is like this. So take a look. If I remove the healing abutment, this is the shape that the soft tissue takes. But this is not what I am looking for. So the question is, this is the shape of the soft tissue below a complete denture. This is a different case, but it's an example to illustrate what I am talking about. Can you see the shape of the soft tissue? And I am planning to make a fixed restoration with ideal soft tissue contour in this case. And this is how the tissue heal below a fixed prosthesis. Take a look, different case. But when you remove the prosthesis, you already have the soft tissue architecture. My question is, can we obtain in the tissue that is flat because heal below a complete denture, but you are planning for a fixed restoration, can you obtain the same soft tissue architecture that if you make immediate loading protocol? The answer is yes, like in this case. Can you see? Why? Because in both cases, we place the implant in the correct 3D position from the prosthesis, from the margin of the prosthesis. So in the immediate loading protocol or conventional loading protocol, in both cases we have the same space because we place the implant in both cases at 3 mm and we reduce the bone in both cases. So now we need to place the implant. Take a look. We place Remember, we have two prostheses, so we start with the prosthesis without ovate pontic. If not, we cannot put the prosthesis into the mouth because the ovate pontic. So where is the position of the implant? At the level of the bone? No. Depend. We need to apply the 3A-2B rule. And we know from the tomogram that we need to cut the bone. So this is the position. Using this prosthesis, I can start doing the bone reduction. Take a look. We have 1.5 in the molar and 1.5 in the canine. Now we start doing the bone reduction. Also, you can see all this protocol in my paper also from the Journal of Prosthetic Dentistry from 2012 that is in a complex case, very complex case, or in a single case in the Journal of Prosthodontics in my paper of 2013. Now, I reduce the bone for canine and for molar. Can you see? Now, the bone from the margin of the molar is at 3 millimeters. So now I can place the implant at the level of the molar of the bone because it's 3 millimeters. And you see the difference? Now we start drilling, keep the 2B. Once you have the osteotomy ready, you have the 3A and the 2B. Now I can start working with the prosthesis with the ovate pontic. Because remember, we need a space below the ovate pontic also. So I start cutting the bone and create the space for the ovate pontic. I want between the ovate pontic to the bone around 1.5. Now I can reduce the bone. You can see we place the implant. We have the 3A-2B in the extraction socket. We have the implant deeper into the bone and a gap in the facial area of the implant. Now with suture, I cannot make the loading, so I need to put a complete denture. And after osseointegration, this is how the patient looks. This is not the aesthetic, the pink aesthetic for the patient, but we have the space. So now I take an impression and using the prosthesis of the patient that show me what is the margin, I can make an index in the facial aspect and I can copy the facial aspect of the teeth and the margin in relation with the soft tissue. But remember that from the margin, each implant is 3 millimeters. Now, I just need to adapt this soft tissue to the margin of this crown because we already made the adaptation into the bone of the patient and we already placed the implant at 3 millimeters. So I know that I can reduce a little bit this ovate pontic, around 1.5, but adapt it to the margin of the crown. Once I adapt it in the ovate pontic, I can remove the soft tissue and adapt it for the area of the implant. Can you see in both canines? Now we adapt it to the margin. We reduce, like I make in the previous cases, until the soft tissue match with the margin of the crown. And now, this is before and after. Can you see the molar? How we adapted? And the canine. Take a look of the canine that we reduce the soft tissue, but to make the reduction of the area of the implant, you need to remove the soft tissue from the master cast and fabricate in this master cast a new provisional. You place the provisional without any anesthetic, just ask the patient to bite with some cotton for 20 minutes or more. After, prosthesis will fit, and now when you remove in 2-3 days, you can see. So here, just when the prosthesis is fitting, just screw and leave the patient go home, and in few days when you remove the prosthesis it's like this one. And here now you can take a new impression or just send your master cast and your technician. I send this to my friend Enrico Steger in Circumsan, so they scan the model and they fabricate a new prosthesis, a new prototype in acrylic. Once it's ready, they can mill from a block of, at the beginning is acrylic. You can see this is the prototype, so you can evaluate into the mouth of the patient. This case was done by David Pleichner in the Dental Labor Steger in Brunic, Italy. Now we can evaluate. Take a look. We integrate the pink and white aesthetic. If everything is okay here, So now we can move to the final restoration. They can copy the provisional or from the same file that they have scanned, they fabricate from a block of zirconia the new prosthesis. In this particular case, we add feldspathic ceramic from Canaan to Canaan. Very important, you need to keep the incisal edge. If you reduce zirconia to add feldspathic ceramic, you need to keep the incisal edge in zirconia to avoid the fracture or the chipping of the ceramic. But from premolar to molar is monolithic zirconia. Now we add the liquid color. We sintering the prosthesis. This is how it looks after sintering. Take a look of the incisal edge, and this is after we add the feldspathic ceramic. Now the prosthesis is ready. We need to replace the prototype, the acrylic prototype, for the zirconia restoration. Now we screw, and you can see this is the final case. Was made for another technician, Michel Frapporti, also from the Dental Lab of Steger. So you can see how we can integrate the pink and white aesthetic. Take a look. Remember that the soft tissue was flat after we placed the implant. Beautiful ceramic. And what we planning in our case at the beginning with this protocol that I don't mention, but it's a special protocol that we can use to develop this type of cases, we can obtain at the end. So to conclude, we almost finished. This is 1 hour. Our first step when we are planning to restore cases with implant is the determination of the 3D position of the new teeth before placing an implant to see if the bone is in a correct position. Once you determine the 3D position, make the analysis between the margin of the crown to the level of the bone in apical and lingual direction. So here you can apply the 3A-2B rule. This could be as a diagnostic tool to planning the case and also to place the implant. So if between the margin to the bone you have 3 mm, you can place the implant at the level of the bone. If you have, in some cases, for different reasons, less than 3 mm and you are planning for fix, you need to cut the bone. But if you have more than 3, the bone is far away, you cannot move your margin. So you need to planning for add bone. And this is where we can use our biomaterial to bring the bone close to the margin. At least you want to make a prosthesis with pink ceramic. So you don't need to worry about that to add bone, because if you have enough bone, you can make a nice restoration using pink ceramic. So also the biomaterial are very important as a complement to obtain the teeth that we're planning for our patient, to obtain the bone foundation to be able to apply this 3A-2B rule. With this biomaterial, once again, we can obtain this 3A-2B rule. So with this, we conclude, and I want to thank all of you for listening my presentation. And if you have or you want to see more of my cases, you can see my webpage, prosthodontics.es. Also, you can take a look of all type of courses that we are doing here in Castellón, Spain, in our Mediterranean Prosthodontic Institute. So now we can start checking for some questions. Thank you very much for your attention. Okay, so we have a question from Natalie. When do you recommend to use Cerabond or Max Graph? So when it's possible, I prefer to use Max Graph. But the point to use Max Graph is that in some countries, for some legislation, so it's not allowed to use the Max Graph. But if it's possible, I prefer to use Max Graph. And also, if you use Cerabond, you need to mix with the bone of the patient, so it could be a little bit more difficult. I need to use my glasses to read some questions. I have a question about that To cut the bone is easy, but what about if we have more than 3 millimeters of space? So in this type of cases, if we have more than 3 millimeters of distance, the 3A-2B rule is a diagnostic tool. So if you are planning for, let's say, for a molar, and the perfect molar, you make your margin and you measure the distance. If you have 3 millimeters, place the implant at the level. If you have less, cut a little bit the bone. But if you have more, you need to decide if it's 1-2 more millimeters and your crown will be 2-3 more millimeters longer in apical direction. This is a complication, it's a aesthetic complication. If not, probably I will not do anything. If in a molar I have more than 3 millimeters, let's say 5, what happens if I place the implant at the level of the bone? My crown will be longer 2 millimeters in apical direction. But this is not an aesthetic problem. So probably I can do like this with a 5 millimeter crown. But what about if it's in a central, in a gummy smile? It's critical. If you have more than 3 millimeters and you place the implant at the level of the bone, your crown will be longer. So in this type of cases, it's very important that you graft before and create the bone foundation before place the implant. And later, when you apply the 3A-2B rule, so you can obtain the correct size of the crown. This is speaking about single cases. If we are speaking about fully maxilla, so we can see the case that the bone is at 3 millimeters, simple, implant at the level of the bone. But if the bone in some areas is more than 3, in other areas is at 2, and in other areas is less, so, and if you are planning to obtain a fixed restoration, fixed means in my case that the teeth come from the soft tissue. So in this case, if we have this difference, some areas at 3, some areas less than 3, some areas more than 3. So in the area that I have less, I can cut the bone. In the area that I have more, I can graft. So you can review in one of my papers, I think 2011, about the most apical buccal bone level protocol. I have this case where I have the 3 situations, and in some areas graft, in some areas cut the bone, in some areas leave the bone. Okay, Kirill Rekel, hello, thank you for watching me. Diego Navas, when we use tissue level implants, so we need to follow the same concept because it's the bone that change. So measure or make the analysis from the margin also to the level of the bone and counting the millimeter to the root surface of the implant, because from the root surface of the implant to the other portion of the implant you will have the 3 millimeter. Kirill Rekel from St. Petersburg, my friend. The question is, do you use 3D virtual planning program for planning without wax? Yes, now we start doing, I think this is the future. At the beginning we use a lot of clinical photography. Now what we can do is scan the face of the patient in the different position. We can scan the patient with closed mouth, in rest position, smiling, and in a big smile. Frontal view, lateral view, and later we can make a intraoral scan, or from alginate impression scan the model of the patient. Now we put in the software the scan of the face of the patient, we put in the software the scan of the model of the patient, and we put also the tomogram, and we can match all together. Once you have the model, you put the bone and you put the face all together, and you can switch the face from the rest position to smiling. Remove from the scenario put again and check in rest position and put the new teeth for the patient. But this needs to be with patient with some teeth to maintain the lip support. And you set the teeth virtually in rest position. Now you remove the face from rest position to smiling to see if the teeth that you set in rest position are okay during the smiling, and you can move more apical and coronally and rotate the face of the patient to take a look if the smile is okay. Once it's okay, so you can print the frame of teeth for the patient and you can receive. Take a look. I have here, I am working in one of the cases. Can you see? This is how you receive the frame of the patient. This is one of the patients for today. And let me show you here the teeth. When I receive the teeth, I just can go to the mouth of the patient and place in the position. And you see, this is another block for this area. And I think this is for the other side. It's like some small veneers. And we can check in the mouth of the patient. And this was made virtually. And you can do all modification virtually. Okay. Dr. O. Siedakov, the time that we can wait for soft tissue stabilization. So normally, because I know that I have, in this type of cases that is fixed, and I know that I have the space, I just wait around 2 weeks. In average, 2-3 weeks. What about when I need a screw implant to more apical, bone always more apical for 2 millimeter? From Nazar Babinski, I understand that this is we counting that the bone moved 2 millimeter. So in the cases that I am planning, I am using a implant that is at the level of the bone, and we are working with a conical connection, so we can expect, because the biomechanics of this implant and some special characteristic, that the bone remains stable and keep the bone at this level. This is why I make my planning using this as reference. If I expect that the bone go down 2 more millimeter, it's different. I need to expect that the bone stay at the level of the implant. If we have exposition with the mucograph or with adjacent membrane, we try to obtain primary closure. But if we have some exposition, what happens is that the resorption of the membrane is faster. Do you use pink ceramic if space more than 3 millimeter? Yes, but if it's not in the aesthetic zone, that is not critical. Speaking in a single cases, like 1 or 2 units or 3 unit bridge. In a fully maxilla, when the space is more than 3, yes, of course, I think that this is the more simple cases, like all on 4, and patient show the soft tissue, so we can use the pink ceramic. Okay, from my friend Cici Hong, I think from Taiwan. Hello. If about the case at anterior zone having partial denture as a provisional, what will you do if it is a posterior zone sign the occlusal force? So I need to make a provisional restoration and remove a lot of acrylic inside to avoid the contact between the healing abutment to the acrylic. Okay, I hope I answer all the questions. Okay, thank you very much once again for your participation. It was a great pleasure to be part of this project with botiss biomaterials.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rojas Vizcaya, for sharing your lecture and your insightful information with us. We'd also like to thank botiss for making this online course possible. And thank you, our wonderful audience, for your interest and participation. The CE quiz is now available online on the course page, and completing it will allow you to earn your ADA CERP CE credits. The recording will be posted online within the next 48 hours. You'll receive an email notification with the link to the recording. Further questions for Dr. Rojas Vizcaya may be submitted directly on the website, on the courses page, under the Ask the Expert tab. So please go ahead and submit your questions, and Dr. Rojas Vizcaya will be sure to get back to you as soon as possible. Please be sure to visit the botiss educational platform, www.botissacademy.com, and keep an eye out for a growing schedule of online courses. Thank you again to all, take care, and goodbye.